Welcome to Deal Flow Live. I am one of your hosts, Brody Vinson. Today, I do not have my host, Ryan Santo, on. He is away with family. So I'm doing a little pre-recorded episode for y'all today. We are going to be looking at a few different service-based businesses. So we're looking at really just blue-collar, basic service-based businesses, just your classic kind of stuff like that. Nothing fancy, just boring businesses that are stable, recession resistant, good investment type of businesses. And today we're looking at bigger businesses than we typically do. We typically look at businesses all around the size, all around different sizes. Today we're specifically looking at businesses that are doing more than $1 million a year in cash flow already. And so these businesses, you're going to see a little bit higher multiples. You're going to see a little bit different setups as far as employees and things like that. And it should be interesting. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So the first one I wanted to look at is, let me go ahead and move over here. We're going to look at this plumbing company in Central Florida. So this plumbing company is cash flowing, let's see, about $1.965 million in cash flow. It's represented by Michael Steinberg, Hedgestone Business Advisors. I've actually briefly met him over a call before. Really great team over there. They've got a solid national operation. So, they do pretty good work. So this business is, first thing I want to figure out here is what is the multiple? So it's doing 899,999, and they're asking just under 9 million rather. And it is cash flowing 1.965697. So they're asking about a 4.57x multiple on this business. Actually, a pretty fair ask when you're considering almost $2 million in cash flow. That's not an unfair multiple at all, in my opinion. So next, let's kind of get into the business description here. It's been around for over 20 years, right? Been around for over 20 years. That passes a really major check when I'm looking at businesses. Usually I'm looking for businesses that have been around for 5+ or 10+, even better, 10+ years. And so when it's been around for over 20 years, that just shows me that it's a solid, stable business that is likely to stick around for a little while. Great reviews online. That's good. That just shows that they've got a good reputation. Mostly residential. They do some commercial projects as well, though. Honestly, I like that a lot. Commercial projects are great, but if they're doing this well and this consistently with residential, then that, to me, that's probably going to be a little bit more consistent. Depending on the market. Covers all of Florida. Very interesting, but based here in Central Florida, so they got a good centralized location. This is something I love a lot. They keep 40 to 60 days of backlog work, meaning, if you were to buy this business, they already have some work in the pipeline that they're pretty much guaranteed to be doing. So it's just going to be really solid there. You can have a high expectation that work is going to be coming in, and they could probably show you what work is coming in. So also, one thing I really like about this is that they show exactly where the jobs are coming from. They show how many jobs per month. This is pretty crazy. So this must be specializing in really, really large homes, if I had to guess, because this seems like a very, very high price for their jobs. They must be doing really, really large jobs. One thing I would want to know is, is this mostly new construction? It doesn't really say so far. We'll keep looking. I will say if it's mostly new construction that they're doing, then to be honest, that's actually a ding against this business. Not to say new construction is not good business, but you don't ever know for sure that new construction is going to keep up at the level that it was at before. So when I'm talking to some of the more established private equity players that I either work alongside or get advice from, they say to avoid service mixes like that where it is mostly new construction based in a lot of these service based businesses, just because of that. One thing I like here, 50 employees, that's a huge team. Neither owner has much involvement. Business runs itself. When the team is this big, I can believe that pretty wholeheartedly, to be honest. With that much cash flow, that much revenue coming in, you can pay someone really, really well to run this business. I would just want to know what the plans are for the top operators and the top management in place. I would want to know for certain that they're planning on sticking around and continuing to run the business. Looks like you do get some property included in this business. I might be curious about whether the owners would carve that out of the price and just lease it. But then again, for as large as the business is, might make sense to just go ahead and do it. Vehicles and machinery included in the price, which is great. I would probably just want to understand how those were valued and make sure that they weren't overvalued, because it doesn't really say, what the value of the inventory or the furnitures, fixtures, and equipment are here. They want a full buyout. That's good to know because, a lot of times when I'm looking at a business for potential acquisition, we are looking for one where the owner will do something called rolling over equity, which basically means they keep part of the business and stay on as kind of a consultant. So if they're completely opposed to that, not to say it's definitely a red flag, but sometimes it's something that gives a little bit of pause. And, I want to know why. Like, why couldn't they just be available for the occasional call in just to check and, basically check in with something like, hey, this manager is having this issue. How do you usually handle this? Or how would you typically handle this? Like, this top level manager is having this issue that I don't know how to solve. Or, this one little thing I couldn't remember from, like, this one little thing we didn't get handled in the transition process. How should we handle this? Something like that. Usually just to have a little bit of insurance, it's a good thing to be able to keep them on for a little bit at least. So I would want to understand why they are not really into that. This is great. It's SBA approved to the max amount. That being said, the max amount for SBA financing is 5 million. So you would only cover, a little more than half of that with the purchase price that they're asking for here. They also say seller financing available. So I would want to understand how much seller financing is available. So it could be that you could get an SBA loan for the 5 million and seller finance the rest. That could be pretty great. This is interesting. One of the partners has been elected and the other partner has another venture. So that's why they're selling. I think that's very interesting. You might honestly make some great connections just purchasing this business. And it looks like it's projected to do more in 2024 than it did previously, with even better profit margins. So I would want to just check in on that and see if those financials are updated. But altogether, this looks like a pretty incredible business. I like that they keep such a backlog of work. This is one that I don't think is overvalued. I think is mostly a pretty good situation. Again, would just want to know a little bit more about some of the things that we talked about, but altogether looks like a great business. So the next thing I wanted to move on to is actually a little bit different. So this is a staffing company, staffing and commercial janitorial company. I thought this was pretty interesting. This is a really, really big one. This is, one of the biggest businesses that we've looked at on the show. So they do staffing and commercial janitorial. So I was very curious to see just a little bit more about what they say about how that works. What I assume that means is that they handle the actual staffing of the janitorial staff that goes in place, but then they actually make sure that they keep working and all of that as well. So kind of a full service staffing and cleaning pipeline, which is very, very cool. That means, they probably handle their expenses really well. So we've got 4.7 million in cash flow, asking 14 million. Let's do the math on that real briefly. So 14 asking price, about a 4.7 million. That's going to come out to around just under a 3x multiple, which actually is an incredible deal for something this size. To be honest, I feel like that's a little bit undervalued. So let's dive into this a little bit. Whenever you see cash flow above a million, especially over 2 million, over 3 million, something like that, the multiple usually starts to go up. A multiple under 3x cash flow, typically you're talking about something doing under 5 or 600,000 in cash flow for a multiple like that. So I find this very surprising, how this is valued. Let's see, it's been serving the market for over 10 years. They say established in 2014, so right about 10 years. So that passes the check there. Been around for a little while, and that's always really good to see. They provide tailored human resources solutions, staffing, recruitment, temp to hire. Interestingly enough, I actually come from the temporary staffing world, not in cleaning and janitorial, but in hospitality. So I'm pretty familiar with the space. This is what you want to see with this. So this is how we did well when we were in staffing. We served hotels. It looks like they serve a lot of smaller clients as well, but we did a lot of hotels, colleges, universities, stuff like that, big commercial clients. So when they've got a lot of big commercial clients, that's always a great thing to see here. Big commercial clients like that will pay a lot for staffing. A lot of times they'll pay pretty exorbitant rates if you can handle everything in-house, just because they have large budgets. It looks like they serve some really well-known brands as well. So I would want to know a little bit more about that. I would really want to understand what the agreements look like. I would mostly want to understand, do they have long-term contracts with a lot of these 200 clients? But it's great to see that they have such a large amount of clients. So, the business is not dependent on one particular client. The seller's open to a consulting agreement with the buyer to make sure there's continuity of client accounts and revenue. That's great. Like I said before, that's something you want to see. Here's where things can get a little bit odd with staffing, is they say they have 1,000 employees, but they also say that it's a temporary staffing. So they're probably talking about a lot of these like temporary staffing employees. So they aren't necessarily, on paper. I would really want to understand whether these employees that they're claiming are exclusive to them or whether they're just people in their database. I would want to understand way more about what that looks like, because for us, at our time, we probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of between 350 and 400 employees that we could claim, but a lot of them were not necessarily exclusive to our opportunities. They might work some jobs with us for a temporary time and then go work some other jobs, come back and work some more with us. So I would really want to understand what that looks like. But I thought this was a really interesting one, for anyone who owns maybe a chain of, any kind of commercial locations already, or for someone who has a large cleaning business already. This would be an incredible business to own, just to have an incredible labor pool, because a lot of the time with these blue collar types of businesses like cleaning, like janitorial services, the most difficult thing is the labor and the staffing and all of that. So if you have a whole team in place running that, that's really good stuff. With a business this big, I would assume that there's a strong management team in place and that it's not very dependent on the owners. They don't really say much about that, but I would want to understand more about where they fall within that 1,000, what the whole structure looks like, and how that's going to work post-sale as well. But I like this. I like this one a lot, assuming there's nothing materially wrong with it, and the outlook looks good for, continuing to work with some of these clients. This is kind of a steal as far as the multiple goes. So let's look at this one next. So this time we've got a full service landscape construction business. So they're asking 6.75 million for this one. It's cash flowing just under 2.6. So let's do the math on this one to start things out. So I'm going to put 6.75 and we are at cash flow of 2.59. So again, under a 3 times multiple here. We're coming in at a 2.6x multiple on this business. And they also have, it looks like, just over $1 million worth of furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. Basically, all that means is, probably their lawn mowing machines, like their lawn mowers, their riding mowers, things like that. All the different equipment that they use for the land, all the edgers, the weed whackers, stuff like that, whatever, hedge trimmers, whatever they use for the landscaping that they do, vehicles, equipment, and things like that are going to be within the scope of that. So they have a lot of equipment. I would definitely want to understand how it's valued, how the equipment itself is valued. But even if you took out that equipment, which seems to be included in the price here, this is already a great deal just from the cash flow. This business has been around for a really long time, since 1983. So I love to see that. Let's take a look at some of the depth of this business. Again, I can't say more than what I already said, but being around for over 40 years is incredible, because you just know that business has a rich history in the area, probably a lot of really long-term standing clients. It says they've got an incredibly solid management team, a general manager in place, as well as an entire middle management staff. So I believe it when they say that it operates on autopilot. There's genuinely like a lot of layers of separation between the owner and all of the employees. So let's see, the owners will stay on for a consultant for at least a year to help with sales thereafter if desired. So that's fantastic. If you see that an owner is willing to help with sales specifically, that's just a lot of security in the mind of someone who's buying a business like this, and to help with a smooth transition. A long-term history with existing client base, lots of repeat construction opportunities. I would want to understand what that looks like. Is this very dependent on new construction? So going back to what we said earlier in this episode, sometimes that can be a little bit shaky because you don't know if the new construction is going to change a lot year after year, and you could lose a large segment of the work if there are less new construction opportunities. And it does say that's 60% of the business. So that could be a little bit sketchy. They have a backlog of work to the tune of $5 million, though, with a bidding process that produces $1 million a week in bids. I would want to dig in a little bit and understand what that looks like. How likely is that backlog of work to happen? Is that pretty much secured? Is there some competition for that? Because if it's very likely to happen, that $5 million of work, then, based on these margins, it wouldn't handle the entire asking price or anything, but it's going to handle a fairly large chunk of the asking price just with that guarantee. So I would want to understand a little bit more about how locked down that is. Looks like the owner has decided to pursue more maintenance related, high-end related business. Interesting. Definitely, in my opinion, just personally, more upside in the maintenance stuff, because you can it's just longer term contracts with a little bit more continuity. Let's see. Looks like this particular business, there's 40% of the revenue. I would want to understand where the owner is going to pursue that, because if they're going to be pursuing it in the same area, that would be a little bit of an issue if you're buying this business. So a little bit of a ding there, a little bit of a point off there. That's a little bit of a red flag to me. So I would want to understand what that plan looks like. If they have a great plan to go do it somewhere else, that's one thing. But if they're going to do it in the same area, then, things could get a little bit shaky. They've got a whole office, warehouse, parking. The seller owns it, and looks like they're not offering to sell it as part of the business, but they'll make it available with an attractive lease. So that's great for the margins of this business. Wow. It also, aside from $1 million in assets, it also includes 750,000 in working capital. But it looks like they are only considering full cash deals, no seller financing or bank financing of any kind. Only cash and private equity are welcomed. So I would want to understand a little bit more about why that's the case. That's not necessarily a red flag to me, but it just seems a little bit odd. That being said, they're selling at a massive discount. So it seems like the owner is primarily cash motivated, I guess, to go use it on their other venture that they're talking about. So again, I would just want to understand that they're not going to be. See, this is actually, now I'm a little bit sketched out, to be honest, people. So if you've been following along, they said that the owner wanted to go pursue. They've decided to pursue. Okay, you know what? This might mean that this year they've decided to pursue more maintenance for this business, but then it says that they're retiring. So that makes a lot more sense. I take back everything I said, as long as I'm interpreting this right. All that they're saying is they ramped up the maintenance related end of this business, and it ended up becoming about 40% of the revenue. So it's still a little bit low as far as the service mix you would want to see there, but altogether, pretty good stuff. And again, this business is at a massive discount. If it's genuinely doing that much in cash flow, and they're including over $1 million in assets and $750,000 in working capital, then this asking price is pretty low, in my opinion. Last thing is, I would just want to understand what the actual organizational chart looks like between these 47 employees. Are all of these full-time? Are some of these part-time? Are they all registered with a landscaping business? Maybe not. But what does that look like? Is it a risk that I'm willing to take? That's kind of the stuff that I would be thinking and looking to find out. But anyway, let me know what you think. Send me a message if any of these businesses intrigue you. If there's something that you would want personally for your portfolio, send me a message, just, giving me your thoughts on what these businesses look like, whether they would be good investments in general, who you think they would be good investments for. And tune into Deal Flow Live every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We love doing this show. The whole point of the show is just for anyone who's looking to buy a business, for you to understand what to look for a little bit more, just so you can do your due diligence, and for you to be able to make more educated, informed choices. And for anyone who's trying to sell a business, just to understand the mindset of how someone's going to look at your business when they're thinking about buying it, what types of things they're going to be thinking, what types of things they see value in. So continue to tune in, whether you're looking to buy or sell a business. Again, my name is Brody Vinson, and we will have my other co-host, Ryan Santo, back very soon for our next episode. So looking forward to that. You can find either of us on LinkedIn, me at Brody Vinson, him at Ryan Santo. You can also find me personally at Brody Vinson on pretty much any channel: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those. So message me anywhere. Let me know what you want to see covered on the show. And we're looking forward to seeing you next